o Instituto fez mais um evento social, só que foi um evento diferente. Tivemos a visita de um grupo de americanos de uma ONG chamada Black Men's Option, que estiveram na Maré e estiveram no Turano. Foi maravilhoso. Eles contribuíram com 120 cestas básicas. Conseguimos também fazer o Cine Comunidade para as crianças. E no final tivemos um jantar para todos os convidados.
So today was a wonderful day. It's a privilege to be able to be in the position to give back. And as we travel, we see things and we want to do something. And this was a perfect opportunity today to give back to a community and be a part of this community in Brazil.
Oh, today was a very wonderful day. It was a life-changing experience. I got to see exactly what Rodrigo does. He has a very great project. I think it's very inspirational. To me, he's a hero.
Agradeço demais ao Ralph da Black Men's Option pela parceria e mostra que, independente das culturas diferenciadas, todos podemos pensar pelo bem maior, que é o ser humano, e a melhora das crianças através de projetos sociais, esporte e entretenimento. Ralph, a você, meu máximo respeito. Muito obrigado pela parceria e a visita aqui no nosso país. Os.
Like I said, the terminology that you created, the Matrix.
I borrowed it, actually. I can't take all of that credit because, I don't want to take nothing away from that sister that wrote the movie,
Okay.
The Matrix. I borrowed it from her, actually.
Okay.
And it was just an analogy to say that we live in that matrix where we think that that's the norm. It
Exactly.
isn't the norm.
It's
we
not
need to
the
get out of
norm.
those borders. A lot of people don't want to lead a block, for the fact that that's all that they know. A passport is true freedom.
To me, it's a lot of guys think that the reason why we black men travel, and this has been the biggest misconception. This is even going on during the movie. That we go to these other countries because we're women starved, we're thirsty as hell, and we got it so bad in the Matrix that we got to leave to go get a woman. It's more, to me, it became more than just a woman.
Right.
When I travel, it's an excitement.
Exactly.
It's a great stress reliever.
Exactly.
Without stress, when you stress out your life, or at least low in your life, okay, you live longer.
You get to experience things, you get to see beautiful countries.
Exactly.
And you get to experience with somebody who ain't going to stress you with the baggage that they bring along
Exactly.
with them. You understand what I'm saying?
Welcome to BMO Radio with your host, Eric Spencer, president of the Black Man's Option.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to another edition of BMO Radio. I'm your host, the Prez. Appreciate y'all for coming out tonight. Tonight, we'll be continuing our conversation about the real deal in Brazil. We've done 3 of these shows, and I have thoroughly enjoyed working with various people, from BB&T to my man Marcus Urbano. And I really think that we're hitting on a certain type of information that most people don't really care to advertise. Why? Because it's not fancy. It's not sensational. It doesn't catch your eye. But what we're here to do tonight is to expose the truth. That's just all it is. Now, if you don't agree with it, that's fine. You can always dispute what we say. But it's hard to go against the facts. And that's what we're doing tonight. We're putting out facts. So for the show tonight, we're talking about racial color classification. Now, this is something that BB&T have been wanting to talk about, and I am thoroughly interested in hearing his perspective. Now, before I bring him up, I did a little bit of research. Now, I've been traveling to Brazil for years now, and there's certain things that I have observed in my travels. And tonight, we're going to have some of those discussions because I think that's going to be very important for Black men that are traveling to Brazil. If you're serious. Now, if you're just going there to have a good time, it's not really relevant. You don't really care. You're not looking at the environment. But if you're talking about picking up, leaving the U.S., and moving to the matrix, moving out of the matrix to move to Brazil, thinking that you're going to have this better life, which you can. We just want to make sure that you have all the information so you can make the best decision for you. Now, it's always been said that Brazil has the largest population of people of African descent. Now, is that true? Maybe, maybe not. It really depends on who you ask. If you ask Americans and people from the outside, you would say yes, just based on the sheer numbers and the amount of slaves that were dropped off in the transatlantic slave. But if you ask Brazilians, that would be a totally different story. They would say no, because they claim whatever is going to be beneficial for them. And if they can do what they call passing, which in the States, that was a big thing, then they're going to do so. Anything that they can do not to be associated with negra or preto, then they're going to do so. So before I get into it tonight and before I bring Marcus up, I just want to play this video that I found that was very interesting, and it's going to bring some information to the conversation tonight. Well, let me get this thing going. No sound. Hold on. Somebody said that they didn't have any sound. Is that true? Let me see. Could everybody hear that? All right, we're going to try this again. Because I could hear it, no audio. All right, hold on for 1 second. Let me see here. Let me see. Let me check no sound. All right, let me check this. Let me get the sound up. Let me check. Add this to the scene. Entire screen. Also share it. All right, there we go. Got you. All right, we good to go now. Let's roll.
Meu nome é Simone.
Meu nome é Regina.
Meu nome é Joacinei.
Race, color, identity in Brazil, it's complicated. Even within the same family, how you see yourself and how others see you are not always the same thing. Meet Simone's family. They live in a community on the outskirts of Rio de Janeiro.
Meu nome é Rodrigo.
Eu sou Isabelle. Daniele.
Jéssica. Meu nome é Sara. E eu tenho 5 anos e minha idade é 5 anos.
Para mim só existe duas raças, branco ou negro, né? Branca, logicamente eu não sou, então sou negra.
Eu sou branca.
Eu sou preta. Eu me acho preta, mas as pessoas me acham morena.
A minha prima Jéssica é branca, o cabelo dela é liso. Minha mãe é branca e meu pai era negro.
Meu pai é branco. A minha mãe é preta.
Minha raça é negra.
A minha cor mesmo é marrom bombom, mas como não tem isso, eu sou pardo, né?
Eu acho que o Ney é negro.
Pardo significa ser uma pessoa misturada.
A minha filha é branca, embora ela é misturada. Eu sou negra e o pai dela é branco.
A minha cor é marrom.
Ela é branca pela cor da pele que ela tem.
Por que a sua cor é marrom?
Não sei.
Eu acho que a raça muda a minha vida, acho que desde o início, né? Sou ciente da história toda que eu carrego quando me identifico como negro, o peso que isso tem.
Minha cor nunca influenciou e nem influencia em nada.
Se você tem um aspecto de branco, né, acho que as portas se abrem muito mais facilmente.
Uma parte ruim de ser negra é porque você é classificado pela sua cor, não pelo que você é.
Quando você vai se candidatar a uma vaga de emprego, muitas das vezes você tem as mesmas qualificações ou até maiores do que aquela pessoa branca e as pessoas preferem, né, escolher aquela pessoa branca.
Eu e Simone, minha esposa, nós temos pais preto e branco, mas só que ela tem características maiores da parte preta do que eu. Então eu transito mais fácil no meio do povo do que ela.
Pelo fato de eu ser negra e as minhas irmãs serem brancas, às vezes quando tinha aquelas brigas, né, às vezes elas me chamavam de neguinha, macaca e aquela coisa da briga ali em si, né, mas na hora eu me sentia mal, mas depois passava.
Que eu me lembro, eu nunca chamei ela de neguinha nem de macaca.
Se eu pudesse, eu não mudaria minha cor.
Não, eu não mudaria minha cor.
Ah, minha cor é linda, né? Ser negro é lindo.
So with that being said, let's go ahead and get this conversation started tonight. Please welcome our guest, Marquez, aka BB&T. That's what I like to call him. Hey, Marcus, how you? What do you think, man? What do you think about that clip I just played?
Well, I did an article about that very video. It was actually, I didn't react to the video itself. I reacted to the article.
Mm.
This was about 4 or 5 years ago. Okay, the little girl in that video, she said that she was Mahone. She said she was brown. I don't know if people saw the subtitles or not. But what I saw was that, what's that?
Okay, hold on.
Yeah, I'm hearing it on my end too.
All right, go. Hold on for a second. Hold on for a second. Okay, go ahead now.
Okay. Hey, I'm still hearing that. But the cover picture of that article had this dark-skinned black woman and a light-skinned guy who was black to me. Okay, what caught my eye about that article was when the woman said she wanted to make sure she married the guy. And in her mind, I guess she thought he was white. He was not white to me because he looked like a friend of mine who's a professor at Wayne State University, light-skinned black guy.
Right.
And she says, one condition for me having this baby is that she has to come out white. I mean, she said that openly. So before we even get into the color thing, we have to understand the color thing to go further in the conversation.
Yes.
Because people in Brazil are judged from the moment they come out of the womb. It's like the first thing they check for is the skin color and the hair texture. It's a thing where they reported this back in the 1950s and 60s. Like they can even quote unquote forgive darker skin, but they cannot have kinky curly hair. They don't want that.
Right.
So that's what struck me. That entire video, and I started my blog long before that video came out, but it's a microcosm of everything that I talk about on the blog because you have so much confusion. On my first trip to Salvador Bahia in 2000, the guy that I met there, and I was talking about him in one of the previous lives that we did, this brother looked like a light-skinned, one of the Marley brothers. He had long dreadlocks, and he was just taking me throughout Salvador and all these different neighborhoods. And we would just walk up to people and ask them. And every person that I saw in Detroit, if I were to bring these people back to Detroit, whether they were fair skin or caramel skin or brown or dark or whatever, so many people would say, no, eu não sou negro. I'm not black. Eu sou morena. You know, a couple of people actually got agitated. Like, why are you asking me that? You know, so they're taught from day one, to run away from blackness. We don't want to be black. They could be as dark as me and still look me in the eye and say, no, yo soy moreno. I am not black. I am a moreno. And I mentioned this in one of the previous videos, the term moreno. If you dissect it, in Brazilian society, it's become something else. It still means dark, but Brazilian society has changed it. Did you say something?
No, go ahead. I was going to say something. Go ahead.
Brazilian society, the root of the word is more. In Portuguese, they say mortal. But the point is, the root word of mortal, mora, or like blackberry, amora, it means black. It means dark. The same conversations that we have about the Moors, where people say the Moors were Arabs, and we get this light-skinned type of person.
Right.
Whereas other people say the Moors mean black people. It's the same thing. In Brazil, if you define somebody as a moreno, it could be a dark-skinned black person, a brown-skinned black person, a person of mixed race, a white person with dark hair. So this term is very confusing. I've had different situations where I'm talking about this black person. Well, I don't see no black person. You mean that moreno over there? And so they're taught from day one. This is changing now. I've seen this change drastically in the last 15 years. But if you would go back to Salvador and Bahia in the early 2000s, it was like they didn't get the education at home. Because when I was 8 years old, my mother, who is fair-skinned, told me, Mark, I'm a black woman. I didn't understand how. My kids now look at my mother and say, how can your mother be black? Because she's so fair. Brazilians don't necessarily grow up with that education in the house because they're busy. They've taken the hint that says you should run away from blackness. So that's what comes to mind with that video.
Right. And you know what? It's funny because, having the conversations with locals, they get confused by when we say we're all black, whether you're light or you're dark. And I was looking at one of the videos you just put out about the Brazilian in America where he got his white boy wake up call. No, you're not the right white.
Yeah.
And it's funny because he's confused. He's confused because you're in the States now. You think because you're white, your skin is white, that you are in the club. Oh, no. And see, I live in Brazil. I mean, I live in Orlando, and I'm telling you, there's a lot of them that are here that they're passing. And I tell them, I say, man, if something pop off, they gonna get you too. I say, because you're not the right white. You aren't the right white. I'm just telling you. They know your lineage. They know where you come from. So you may think you're passing now, but let some stuff pop off, and you tell me, oh, I'm white. Oh, no. You Brazilian. So you're from Latin America. You're Hispanic. And that's what they classify them as. That's the crazy part. So it's really interesting talking with you about this stuff because I know it's complex, but I didn't know how complex it was until, doing some more research, some other things that, we talked about. But the other video that you did, and the woman just mentioned it, is the monkey thing. I've seen the thing about the hair and the monkey, and where the woman called the Barbie, the Becky, the Brazilian Becky called the black woman operations manager at Azul a monkey in the airport in Belo Horizonte. Now, as an American, we know that if you call us a monkey, then you are in deserving of what we call a WWA. That's a well-whooped ass. That's on, hey, look here, stand on business, on hard, whatever you want to call it. When those words come out your mouth, somebody's ass is getting whooped. But in Brazil, they take it. They take it. And that's another thing that we try to tell guys, like, yo, you have to be mindful of this when you travel. I say, because they feel entitled and feel like they're above you. Even with my boys, we were in the Body Tech in Copacabana, and we're on the pec deck machine. Me and him, we just in there working out, whatnot. And this white woman comes up, and she's standing there, and she's upset because we're using a machine. Well, we're on the machine. So she went and got the attendant, and the attendant came over, and he's a little skinny, frail dude. Me and my man, we swole, like, bro, we using a machine. So she wanted him to do something, but he knew that he couldn't do anything because we're on the machine. We paid our money. And you could see the frustration in her face. But she wasn't going to do nothing because he heard us speaking English. And it's like, yo, you react different when you hear English coming out of somebody's black versus a Brazilian that would bow down and when he got off the machine and just wiped it down and go, whoop, 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 okay, it's okay, it's okay. And that's something that if you are there, you need to be aware of, because on that day, it just happened to be beneficial for us. But in other parts of Brazil or in the different situation, it might not have worked out that way.
Look,
you're American, you got American status. It might not even have worked out that way. So, so it's interesting with the whole racial and the color stuff, because I personally get confused because I go by how we were taught. We go by the one drop rule. There, they don't, which you can see why they're so confused is their blackness and why they identify with black images and black music from the United States.
All right, man. There's a lot to unpack right there. Let me see if I can.
But go ahead.
Man, there's so many areas, there's so many places we could go with this conversation. The first thing I have to establish here is that all the while I've been focused on, when the quota system started in Brazil at the end of 99, early 2000, tens of thousands of Brazilians said that will never work here because you can never define who's black, who's white, who's mixed. How do we decide this? Yeah, we got to understand at that time, you didn't have the popularity of the Movimento Negro that it is now. So then you still had all these millions of people who you and I would see as black, and they'd be like, no, I'm not black. So in recent years, I've actually had to flip that because I have to ask, okay, what is your standard for whiteness? Because what I'm saying is, I accept the fact that there are white Brazilians. There are some white Brazilians who, wherever in the world they go, they'll be accepted as white. But then you also have this, what we call Brazilian white. And what that means is, in Brazil, a white person can have indigenous or African ancestry and still be considered white. They can still look back 2 generations and see a black grandmother, and that doesn't matter because phenotypically, even though we can look at you and see you slightly mixed or even very mixed, we'll still accept you as white. That can't happen in the United States when people know what your ancestry is. So then when we get into the question about quotas, what we've seen now is that after 20 some years, white Brazilians started adapting the attitude that says if we can't beat them, we'll join them. Which means since they won't take down the quota system, which we feel is unfairly giving black and brown people an advantage, well, we'll just join in. So those white people who've been calling themselves white or identifying as white all their lives, all of a sudden there's quotas on the table and they become brown or even black. So my question is, when you look at some of these white people and they're applying for quotas, saying they're brown now, okay, if we were to say by the American context, I could actually say this person is brown, Latino, or whatever. But this person in Brazil is considered white. Why are you trying to pull my great-grandfather was black card now when you've never gone by a one-drop rule? But now that you have quotas on the table, those white people are magically becoming brown. And so I have to add, that's what's confusing about Brazil, because you have the white people who are clearly white, and you have those who they got some type of mixture going on there. So then which standard are we going by? I've seen people look at some videos that I've done and they say, well, that person doesn't look white to me. Okay. The guy who was in the video that I just did, this is the second or third video I've done something about this. I'm white in Brazil. I get to the United States and I'm not white. To me, that guy was clearly white. The difference is that Americans don't judge just by what you look like. It's like you open your mouth and you speak with an accent that they're not familiar with, and then they find out you're from Latin America, you're automatically labeled a Latino. Automatically. And black people, African Americans are getting confused about this. Let me tell you one story before we move on. Then I want whatever else you want to go into, because this is it takes a minute to understand this. Listen, there used to be this radio program by this guy named Michael Baisden. Do you remember Michael Baisden?
Yes. Came on in the afternoon. I remember Michael Baisden.
Right. So I was driving around in Canada one day, and this was at the time when Vogue magazine had put out a magazine cover with LeBron James and Brazil's top model Gisele Bündchen. Okay, everybody knows her as a Miss Top,
Right.
the
Right.
former
Right.
Tom
Yeah.
Miss Tom Brady at the time. And people looked at the racist origins of that cover. They were like, "Y'all trying to paint LeBron James as King Kong with the white woman." And then they made a comparison. They showed the King Kong with the blonde, then they showed LeBron James with the blonde, and he had his mouth all open, looking like a gorilla, whatever. And I just remember there was a huge controversy. And I remember one guy called into the Michael Baisden show, and he says, "Look, technically, Gisele Bündchen is from Brazil. So that makes her a Latina, which means she's a woman of color." And I'm like, "Are you serious? Gisele Bündchen is the whitest woman in Brazil. She's of German ancestry. How can you come on here and say that she's a woman of color simply because she's from Latin America, as if white people don't exist in Latin America?" So this is what gets to be confusing. Not only where do we have the standard for what we qualify as black, but also what is white. Have you noticed that?
Oh yeah, definitely. Because you know what? That's the same argument that we have in the States now with the reparations. Because now all the Latinos, oh well, I got a black great grandmother or grandmother because you think you might get some money.
Uh-huh.
See now, so now if it's a benefit in there for them, they're black.
Mm-hmm.
So you're not really down with the cause. You just on the fence. You want the benefits, but you don't want to go through the struggle. And that's the same thing that's going on in Brazil. Now that you're starting to see people of color, black people in particular, starting to get recognized and say, "Yo, we need to do something about this." Reparations. Wait a minute. Are you talking about they're going to get money? Like in California, they're proposing this reparations bill, and where they're saying that each black person would get 1.1 million.
Mm-hmm.
Man, they are upset about that. How are you going to give them $1 million? And then why are we paying them? Well, hold up. Wait a minute. Didn't you benefit from the struggle that blacks had to endure for you to get where you are now? Yeah. So you don't think that that's something that needs to be paid back? No, I don't think that. Okay, well then don't worry about it. But when you see that we're getting the money, the benefits, and you have no say-so on it, well, I'm black too. Well, everybody should know this ain't for everybody. Everybody can't come to the cookout. This is, hey, look it. We got cornbread and chitlins only. Ain't no tacos, ain't no burritos, ain't no quesadillas over here. That's just what it is. And the same thing is going on in Brazil. Now that you're starting to get distinctions being made, and there may be some tangibles to go along with those distinctions. Now everybody black, like Paul Mooney say, everybody want to be a nigga, but nobody want to be a nigga. Mm-hmm. That's what it is.
So let me say this, since you brought up quotas, there's a couple things I need to discuss on that. First of all, when this topic comes up, my stance is the following. Because we got all types of immigrants coming into the United States. Many, large percentage of them are coming from Latin America. So then Latin American people will come in here and be like, "Oh, I want to be part of the quota system." My thing is this. All of the Latinos that are coming into the country have their own country that dealt with a slave past. If you want reparations, you need to go to your country and get reparations.
Facts.
There's actually a huge movement in several countries in Latin America where they're pushing for reparations also. Brazil also has this movement for reparations. So we're talking about United States, descendants of the chattel slavery system. Mm-hmm. If your ancestors were in the United States up until 1865, okay, fine. You should be part of it. But if they were not, and you come from Latin America, where there was also slavery, you should be pushing in your country for reparations,
Exactly.
Now, the other thing I want to mention here, this is Brazil. What's going on right now is really confusing. For years, Afro-Brazilian militants have tried to push what they call pardos, mestizos, mulattoes, mixed people into the black category, and they have consistently fought against that. Like, no, we belong in the mulatto, mestizo, pardo category.
Right.
This is the problem. When you push that identity on somebody and they're not accepting, they're not part of the struggle, but they're willing to take the quota and say, "Oh, well, I can get into college because, university makes all the difference in a person's future in Brazil. I can get quotas. Okay, see, yeah, I'm pardo, I'm preto." So then they get into the university, they go to school for 3 or 4 years, 5 years, whatever it is, and they get a degree, first person in their family to get a degree, but their identity has not switched. They're not part of any black struggle. They did that just to get into the college and to be able to get a diploma, which would change their lives. That's where the movimiento negro shoots itself in the foot. The second way that they shoot themselves in the foot, when you classify all Pardus as black. When they're all black, you want to count them so that you can say there's 120 million black people in Brazil because you're counting Preto e Pardo, which means black and brown. But then when these Pardus go to try to get quotas under the quota system, they now have panels that judge these people individually and say, you're not black enough. You're not going to get quotas. So my problem with that is you can't tell these people to identify as black or brown all this time. And then when they try to apply for quotas, you say they're not black or brown enough. So you're using them to blow up the number of black Brazilians, but then you want to exclude them when they want the quota system. So this is why Brazil is so confusing. I have had to change my own position on it because when I first started studying about Brazil, the book that I read by Abdias do Nascimento, I showed that book last week, Africans in Brazil. And he has always said Brazil has the largest black population outside of Africa. At the time, he was saying back then, out of 100, back then, out of 150, 180 million, he was saying there's 120 million Africans in Brazil. Okay. I've had to backpedal on that because I've seen the contradiction. I'll say a large percentage of Pardus, what they call mixed or brown people, a large percentage are black by American standards, but not all of them are. I'm safe. I'm comfortable just saying, look, we can't say how many black people are in Brazil. It could be anywhere from 30 million to 80 million to 100 million. Nobody can say that. I'm more willing to backpedal on that and say it's probably somewhere between 50 and 70 million. That's how I would see it. I could be completely wrong, but I'm not willing to say there's 120 million black people in Brazil because I've seen there, living there and visiting 5 states. There's no way. There's too many people who you just can't classify according to one race.
Right. And that is what differentiates us between the rest of Latin America because of our circumstances. They classified us because there were less of us here in the States. So they could keep count. Okay, well, you're light skinned, but you're still going to be black because your mama's black. So you're gonna be able to sleep in master's house, but you still are going to be considered black. You're going to be able to pass. So all that is considered. And when we had our civil rights movement, we all came together. That's where it was like the one drop rule with black. That's why when you look at the Black Panthers, you see light skin, brown, and dark skin, and we united. Brazil and a lot of Latin countries, they never had a movement like that where they were united under one banner. And
you know
the
what?
longer that, but no, go ahead.
You know what I think? This is just a theory of mine. Okay, first of all, even though Brazil never implemented the so-called one drop rule, there are still inklings in that country that says even though we didn't make a law about it, for example, they still follow that to some degree. What I mean by that is, in the same way that a Brazilian can fly from Brazil to the United States and instantly become white or non-white, the same thing happens from southern Brazil, with a majority, 80% of the population in the 3 southern states of Brazil. 80% of the population in those 3 states classify themselves as white. And those people are more recent descendants of Italians, Germans, Polish people who migrated over to Brazil between the end of slavery up into the mid 1940s or 50s. So a large percentage of those people in the south of Brazil, they're really white by anybody's standards. So a person who consider themselves you could be black, light-skinned black person in Santa Catarina, for example, Rio Grande do Sul. You jump on the plane and go to Bahia, and all of a sudden they're calling you white in a majority state where most people are not white. So then their standards are a little bit open or wider for whiteness than it is in the south of Brazil, where the restrictions on whiteness are more narrow. Now, the former president of Brazil was named Fernando Henrique Cardoso. He was president from 94 to 2002. He used to be a sociologist, so he studied race for years before he ever got into politics. He uncovered this saying that they used to say down in southern Brazil, and it says, "Que não passa em branco, negro é," which means whoever can't pass for white, you're black. So I'm not saying that there's anything in the law in Brazil. Brazilians consistently say that. I say, but there's things in your culture that says you do follow that to some degree. There's also a book by Maria Tucci Carneiro where she talks about there were certain, like, I think it was in the military, where you couldn't get high-ranking positions in the military unless you could prove 2, 3, 4 generations back that you don't have any African ancestry. So even though that's not the standard for society as a whole, you still see these little hints and keys that says, well, we run by that. We just don't let the population know that we do. So my theory is Brazil allows people to deny being black because it works to their advantage. Because if all of these people consider themselves pardos suddenly become negros, they could have a real revolution on their hands.
Right. And that is what I think is part of them doing what they're doing now, because they don't want to have that revolution. They want you to say, like they've always said, like, we're all Brazilian. Racism doesn't exist here, but we're going to whiten you out. We're going to whiten out Brazil, but we're still all the same, even though we're not getting the same treatment. And we noticeably know we're not getting the same treatment, but we're still Brazilians. So now you're starting to say, no, we're Afro-Brazilians. We want to identify separately because we have separate treatment, separate lives in the same country. And just like in that video I showed you before, you had people that are all in the same family, and they still, each one of them had a different opinion about their identity within their family structure. So that's like me. And I'll give you an example, not pertaining to Brazil, but pertaining to color. South Africa, they have this thing where they call people colored. So, you know, that's another WWA word for us as well. They go by the color of your skin. So I have two sisters. One's dark skinned and one's light skinned. And I pulled a picture out and I showed them. I say, who's black and who's colored? It's like your lighter sister is colored and your darker sister is black. I'm like, but we have the same parent, same mother and father. And they look confused. They're puzzled. They're like, how does that happen? I'm like, because because that is who we are as a people. If you try to base blackness based on the color of your skin, then to me that's a fallacy. It's not going to work because of that instance. But here it works for them because that's how they've been brainwashed. And the same thing is in Brazil. That works for them because that's how they've been brainwashed. They've been told that white is the status, is the ultimate. I mean, you got Christ the Redeemer up there at the top with his arms out, and he's white, and they all are praying to him, and they all want to be like him. And it's hard for them to be able to get out of that mindset. It's like, yo, when you really start talking to them, the brainwashing is deep, and it's hard for them to recognize that that's not the case. It's like, yo, that's not how it is. And you know, the other part about it is you have so much admiration for our struggle, what we went through, and being seen on TV and listen to our music, but you still don't identify with how we got there. That's the crazy part to me. Like, I don't understand disconnect.
Let me again, there's so many ways, so many different. It's I'm gonna just say Brazil, their style of racism, I think, is far more sophisticated than ours. Our racism is so blatant in your face, and I'm not saying it's not blatant in Brazil, but the way they were able to manipulate people, I think it was more sophisticated there. For example, a lot of studies talk about the 1976. I don't know if it was an official census that was released or it was just a survey, but you can Google this now. 1976, Brazilians used 136 different color-coded terms to define their race or color. 136 terms. You know, Henry Louis Gates talked about that in one of his documentaries on Latin America, Black and Latin America.
I think I saw that.
Yeah, so I'm saying it's like it was one of the most sophisticated plans. When you confuse people to that way, the lighter skinned person is not going to see themselves connected to a browner skinned person who's not going to see themselves connected to a darker skinned person. So then for the Movimento Negro, or the Black movement, what they call it, the Movimento Negro Unificado, the Unified Black Movement in Brazil, started on July 7th, 1978. And they've been trying to encourage persons of visible African ancestry to identify themselves as Black for 45 years now. Okay.
Right.
Now and they've been very successful. They've been very successful. I mean, you see Black representation and people identifying themselves as Black way more than you saw just 25 years ago. But now there's another movement that's coming up that sees the contradiction in the black movement, and they're coming in saying, okay, we got a Pardo movement now. And so there's a conflict going on, and I'm just curious to know. This is so intriguing because I have to look and see in the next 10 years, where is Brazil going? Are they going back to, no, those are Pardos and these are Pretos? On the flip side, the country that they most look to for this racial identity is the United States. And now where are we going? Because when I do articles and I do videos about Black Brazilians, I always get people in the comment section saying, she ain't black, he ain't black. You gotta, to be black, you gotta have two black parents. So I'm saying, where's Black America going now? We used to include all people in all of the color classifications, whether they were mixed or just light skinned with two black parents, and we would all consider them black. But now Black Americans are starting to say, no, them mixed people ain't part of our group. They might have African ancestry, but they're not like us. So which way are we going? It's confusing in Brazil now, and it's getting more confusing in the United States as more and more African Americans continue to mix with non-white people, non-black people. Where are we going?
Well, I tell you what, I'm gonna use the old adage: your daddy black, you black. If your mama black, you black, and that's just how I look at it. But you're right. I mean, you know, we're here in the States. We don't know the difference between a man and a woman. So when you start talking about race, I mean, really, let's be serious. But that's by design. That is by design. That's and we were talking about this beforehand. Is that there is a systematic effort to decrease African Americans' history, lineage, the shine, the influence that we've had worldwide, because it's problematic in places like Latin America. It's problematic in places like Africa because people do look to us and they still are able to pull from our history. You still have people talking about Malcolm X, Martin Luther King, Huey Newton. So you talking about the 60s, they're still using that today in 2024 as a platform for them to build their revolution. And then the music, I mean, look, come on, let's just be honest. Michael Jackson is the most influential artist ever. Ever. I always say if any of the Jacksons want to go down to Brazil, they would be gods because of what he did, what he exposed. And they have to do something to diminish that because they can't get away from it. And you know what? What's really funny is now, we were talking about it last time, they're starting to parade African-American actors down in Brazil. And I think that's more of an influence type. We're going to be able to control you because you're so enamored with African Americans. We're going to use them to control you, even though in the States they're losing their control. People are looking at them like, no, you're a sellout. No, we're not following you. Like you had Steve Harvey telling everybody to vote blue if you want reparation. Everybody looking at Steve Harvey like, Negro, please. Negro, please. But that's what I'm saying. And the puppet masters no longer really have as much control as they used to. But in other countries, because of the way that we are perceived throughout the world, they're still useful. So you see them going to the continent. You see them going to Brazil and having this influence. But as far as I'm concerned, you bought and paid for it. And to me, it just seems like that's a strategy that they're implementing now to keep you from having this revolution. Okay, we're gonna start showing you more on TV. We're gonna start including your music and all this other stuff. So that's why, yeah.
No, that's exactly what's going on. Because what I'm saying is, when you've seen the history, the manipulation we've seen among African Americans, we've been engineered. That's the same exact thing they're doing in Brazil right now. I see several examples of that. But I want to share an interesting anecdote. You brought up Michael Jackson. Now, you know, he recorded a music video, 95 or 96, for this song he had called They Don't Really Care About Us. And Spike Lee directed the video, and it was in Rio de Janeiro that he recorded that. He involved the drum troupe. Olodum was in the video.
Rio de Janeiro and Salvador.
That's true. Okay, both. Yeah, he did record them in both. Brazil is a country that has a lot of plastic surgery, okay? And when people have plastic surgery there, they'll speak openly about what features that they don't like. Like, I got to get rid of this nose. It's because of my Indian ancestry, whatever it might be. So even though Brazilians claim to not have such a connection to race, they know how to point out features that they don't like that are connected to race. Now, I remember in the late 80s, that period between say 84 to 88, where
Mhm.
Michael Jackson went from, what he looked like in the Thriller video. Then by bad, you just notice a distinct lightening of the skin.
Right.
And then by the early to mid 90s, it's like, man, what's going on with this guy? Okay, I understand now that he has vitiligo. Okay,
Right.
I accept that.
Right.
But when he was going to Brazil and people knew about his plastic surgery, the way we reacted to Michael Jackson is that he doesn't want to be black. We blasted him like, Michael Jackson, he don't want to be one of us no more. He's forgetting his black roots. He goes to Brazil and people were saying, well, he's just trying to improve how he looks, because it's automatic in the mind of Brazilian that you do not want African features. Why would you want that? The standard for you to be considered attractive in Brazil is to be closer to the European phenotype. So they're not going to look at Michael Jackson and say he's trying to destroy his blackness. No, he's trying to look better. There was a book that came out where they talked about the extensive plastic surgeries that Brazilians have, the body that they want to have on the beach, they're having the liposuction and all of these other type of plastic surgeries because they're trying to improve their look. But they're not going to say that they're trying to change the racial characteristics that they have. I'm just trying to make myself look more perfect.
Right. Right.
It's really, it's twisted how they got it going down there.
Right. But it's self-hate. And it starts with the propaganda. Like if you walk through a magazine rack or someplace and you see all the beauty magazines, they're nothing but white Brazilians. There's never a black Brazilian on it. And an Afro-Brazilian lady, she pointed out to me, she said, next time you go into the mall, you go into the bookstore, look at the magazine shelf and look at all the beauty magazines that are geared towards women. They're all white women. And that's what they have been conditioned to. But now they're starting to have their ebonies, their jets and whatnot, and they're starting to identify Afro-Brazilian. They're starting to wear their afros out, even though some of it is, for European men, but some of it is for pride. It's like, I'm Afro-Brazilian. And but at the same time, you still don't identify your mate is somebody looking like you. You're still looking for somebody lighter. So it's like you want to fight the power at the same time you want to drink the milk. I was like, well, what is it gonna be?
I mean, you mentioned the magazine thing. That's something that I would watch before I moved to Brazil, and even when I spent 9 years in Sao Paulo, I would always be on the magazine stand. I would just count, out of the 60, 80, 90 magazines that you'll see on the stand, how many black faces you would see. It was usually like one or two. Oftentimes they'll put black people on a cover if they're with a group of white people.
Yeah.
I had this friend, and he just wanted to do conversational English. So he spoke English very well. I have to admit, I was surprised myself. He was the director of this publishing firm, this advertising agency in Sao Paulo. And I was like, big, tall brother with dreadlocks. Like, dang, that kind of, I have to admit, I was surprised. And we got to be really good friends. And he confided in me. He was like, Mark, when we get business in this company and companies come for us to put together an advertising campaign for us, we will put together a picture, a cover or a photo or whatever, and you have various people in there, and they'll just slowly just start pointing at the people they want to take out the picture, like take him out, take her out, take her out, take him out. And it'll be all black people. And so they're not going to tell you we're taking them out because they're black, but it's clear when you analyze the advertising industry, the television industry, the film industry, just everything is slanted towards whiteness. So,
oh yeah.
Yeah, so I'm saying it was kind of shocking to me because in the United States, when I first started visiting Brazil, you would see at least 6. When I would go to a CVS store, for example, you would see at least 6 to 8 different magazines with black faces on it, specifically targeting the African American population. But after all of these years, there's only been one black magazine in Brazil. They've attempted. There used to be one, I think in the late 80s, early 90s, it was called 100% Negro, which means 100% black. That magazine folded. 1996, Raça Brazil came out, and it's still out. It's been the most successful black magazines, in Brazil's publication history. But it's still rarity. Things are changing, I have to say. And I have to ask the question, when we talk about agendas, why is there a sudden change in Brazil that wants to accept blackness more now? There's an agenda going on.
Well, now that is a deeper conversation.
It is
that
not
that,
today.
that people don't want to have. And you know what? The funny thing is, you know, a lot of people say, okay, well, why would you team up with Black Brazil today? You know, we're Black male empowerment, travel movement. I'm like, but this is the stuff that we look at when we travel together. You know, it's not just one or two people. We have 20 people together, and people are asking like, well, how come this person responded to us this way? How come we're getting these looks? How come this is going on? How come that is going on? And when you do it so often, you have to wonder. And that's why I like having this conversation, because there's things that even I don't know, even though I've been numerous times. And a lot of people just aren't interested in it. But I think it's interesting to see how the dynamics between us as African Americans going to Brazil and how we see things through our lenses and how they see us and how they approach us. And when we see agendas, it's like we've already seen the agenda a mile away because we've already been through it.
Already seen that.
Yeah. It's like you're running a play that we already seen. You got an I formation. You're gonna run this up the middle. But see, what they've done is they've hijacked. Hey, look, in my opinion, they have hijacked the movement, because the real movement had Black men and Black women together. So what they've done is they piecemealed the movement to have the Black female empowerment movement. And then they got the other end of the movement, which is the last day of this month, the Rainbow Coalition. And that's how they have formed the Afro-Brazilian civil rights movement. They're the spearheads, but there's no place for the Black man. And to me, that is the agenda to keep them at a certain level of advancement, because they see that it works here in the States. So now we're gonna run that play on you in Brazil.
Well, you know, it's intriguing that you brought that up. One of my friends, she hung out in a lot of Black women's organizations in Brazil, and she noticed that as well. Like, why is it that when I first started my blog, I'm gonna come back to that. When I first started my blog in 2011, I created the name Black Women of Brazil because I noticed that Black women in Brazil were so organized. They had organizations, they had blogs, they were getting funding for their NGOs. And so I'm like, wow, these Black women are moving this thing. And for years, I'm like, okay, this is cool. Okay, Black women they're playing a major role in advancing Black rights. But this is what I'm saying about what I wasn't noticing. And this was about 5 years ago. One of my friends says to me, like, Mark, I've been to several rallies in Rio de Janeiro. Why is it that it's always like 90% women in these movements? And that's when it started catching my eye about, I didn't see this creeping into the movement. This is why I say when they started mixing LGBT with feminism and the black movement all at the same time. So I'm seeing the same playbook that they're running there that we've talked about seeing in the United States.
Right.
And it's impossible to have this conversation because people are going to say, you know, what's the problem with having women in leadership? You know, are you a misogynist or something like that? And I'm just like, that's not the question here. The question here is, why is it so overwhelmingly represented by Black women? That's what the question is. It's not saying Black women don't belong in the movement. It's just saying, why is it such an unbalance? Why does it seem like that all of the Black websites I see in Brazil are geared for all three of those movements at the same time? But anyway, that's another topic. We got to get back into this color race thing, because we go there.
Yeah. I know we on limited time, but I do want to talk about, and this is very important because I brought it up earlier, as far as you as an American having to deal with a situation similar to the one that happened in Belo Horizonte that you talked about, where the woman called the other Black woman a monkey. And this was recent. I guess the video that you did was recent. And the funny thing was that we were out in Brazil, and see, they heard us speaking English, and then one of the white security guards, he gave us, a little, face like he didn't like us, but when he heard us speaking English, but he said macaco. So he didn't think that we knew what it was. So then we turned around and he said, "You calling us monkey?" His eyes got big because he didn't know that we knew what it was, and he didn't know that you just lit the match to get your ass whooped. And his eyes were real big. He like, and the other guys with us said, "Man, come on, don't start. We don't want to start any trouble." Those are things that you're going to have to be able to tamper down if you're going to be there. And they don't fight back. They don't. It's like they take the abuse. Like we were talking about the incident that happened 2 years ago with this guy named HL when he punched the German dude and punched the German dude out at the Hilton because Americans fight back. That was like big news there. When look, when the incident happened last year with the riverboat with the black people would jumped on the people swimming and stuff like that in Brazil, they were like going crazy. That was like worldwide, like woo woo. But how come you can't do it? If we do it still in 2024, how come you can't?
Well, that's all of this stuff that you're asking are things that I've talked about one time or another on the blog. What we have to understand is the difference in historical context of race relations in Brazil and the United States. Okay. In the United States, it was open hostility. It was open segregation. There was no dispute about the so-called place of Black Americans. Okay. So it was on paper. It was in law. It was segregation. It was Jim Crow. We knew this. So because of this bonded us all together. Whether you light skin or you dark skin, we were all bonded because we were not going to escape our blackness. In Brazil, on the flip side, keep in mind the Civil War, part of the reason it was for the Civil War was the fight over slavery. Brazil didn't have to have a war to come to the end of their slavery. So race relations on the surface have always been smoother in Brazil because of the manipulation. The manipulation says, I remember I read this lady in this book that I read for Florestan Fernandes. He had a book. He was a top sociologist in the 50s talking about race in Brazil. Some of his books were translated into English. And instead of fighting, Black Brazilians were taught, you don't need to fight. Just choose a white partner, whiten your kids, and then within 2 generations, you won't have to worry about this. So that's part of the reason. Today, they're developing a fight. But you got to understand, they've been dealing with this for 60, 80, 100 years, this suave race relations there. So they point to the United States and say that country has a lot of racial anger. We don't have that here. And it's because of how Brazil, quote unquote, trained their Black people. They didn't train them to fight them back. They trained them to blend in into the popular society. So and I see the proof for this when you run into so many Afro-Brazilian militants and activists there, and they're all Black, and I'm Black, and I'm Black. And then you go home with them and you find they with a white partner. It was like, one of my friends, we were just marveling at this, like, damn, her too? Him too? It's like, where's all of that Black talk? And then when I say frustration, it's like, as much as they want to fight for their place in the sun, they really, it's almost like we agreed on this point. We were just like, it seems to me that Black Brazilians will just put their weapons down. Like, look, if y'all stop calling us monkey and stop treating us this way, we will gladly mix ourselves out of the population. That's how they strike me. Because everywhere I go, I see this, and it's just like, how can y'all not see this? So that's the difference.
You know what?
The difference in the historical context of race relations in both countries.
Well, you know what? That's very interesting observation because that makes sense. It's like, why are you letting them talk to you that way? Because I've seen instances where, we've been out and we didn't have a altercation, but we met eye to eye. And you could tell, like, okay, yeah, once they hear you speak English fluently, their whole facial expression changes. And I think that's because, okay, these Blacks have been socialized to fight back, whereas our Blacks have been socialized to kowtown. And if you are used to fighting back and you go someplace where they're used to not fighting back, then there may be problems. And myself included, there's a couple of times I had to catch myself because I know that I'm a guest in somebody else's country. And that's one of the things that I've observed when we travel abroad. Some things you're just going to have to pull back on and let it go, especially when you don't have the numbers and you don't have the support. But had that been something like in the States, you would have had a repeat of what happened at that riverboat. What? Oh, hold up. WWA's for everybody.
So look, so look, there's two scenarios I want to present here that speak to what you're talking about right now. First of all, I can't remember what year this was, but President Theodore Roosevelt had traveled to Brazil. I don't know what year this was. Obviously, we're talking about, I don't know, 80, 100 years ago, whatever. And he was talking to this Brazilian statesman. And the Brazilian statesman stated to him, he says, look, the way you guys are treating your black population is all wrong. The way you treat them with this blatant racism, lynching and segregation, you're fomenting anger in that black population that they're going to always be a problem for you. Look at the way we do it. The way we treat our blacks, they automatically want to just blend in and bleach themselves out of the population. So he laid that out right there. And this is what I'm saying, the historical context of how both countries dealt with black people. The second one is that, okay, talking about this militancy. In the 1930s, the editor of the Chicago Defender was taking groups of black men, or I don't know, just black people, to settle in Brazil because in the state of, I think it was Mato Grosso, they were opening land. They wanted to attract more immigrants into the country. So he's like, man, ain't no racism down in Brazil. We're going down there. He went back. He was just blown away because he's accustomed to hearing about segregation. So when he went to Brazil and didn't see it, he thought it was a paradise. He goes back home, gathers up all his boys. Let's go back and settle in Brazil. And then he was surprised when he found out that their visas got rejected because the Brazilian government found out, oh, these are black Americans. No, we don't want them.
Don't want them.
Their view in Brazil is that we have our Negroes completely under control. We don't want none of those militant black Americans coming down here and messing up our party. So this is a representation of how they see us. They don't want to stir up the pot and wake up black Brazilians, but see that with the advent of the internet and the information that's flowing down there, black Brazilians are getting there.
That's what's happening.
It's getting there. Yeah, it's getting hot.
And you know what? And for me let me piggyback on that because that's something I've always said is that, look, black Americans, we are a unique people. And because of what you said, how we've been conditioned, we fought back. And it's been seen on the world stage. So they don't want you to take that militancy with you to other countries because you take your culture with you when you travel. And it's the same thing in the continent. The same conversation we had in South Africa. How are you the majority and you don't own nothing and you living in poverty? Like, well, they get, That's like me coming in your house, eating your chicken, eating your food, sleeping in your bed with your wife, and you just smiling and just taking it. I said, ain't no way in hell we gonna put up with that. And now I see that they don't want us African Americans to go to places that can inspire others that look like us. And it's not just Brazil, but we just talking about Brazil tonight, but also on the continent. They don't want you to go back over to the continent and get them uppity. But like you said, it's too late because of the internet. They're still seeing it. And even now, you're starting to see a resurgence in it in some places. Right. And they're still seeing it because if you can take a riverboat fight and it can go worldwide and everybody in other countries celebrating those young black men coming to the rescue of that black man that was being jumped by those white men, then that spirit is still alive and people are still identified because it resonates with whatever they're going through in their country.
Yeah. I mean, I've often said that, I started checking out Brazil at the end of 1999, early 2000. And I'm like, what's going on with y'all? I didn't get it. They didn't have access to the resources. They were completely denied black history there.
Yes.
The first trip when I made to Salvador in 2000, and I met I told you about the brother who was working in the tourism agency, and he saw me. He was like, Americano. And I started hanging out with that guy. He showed me a lot of stuff. He took me a lot of places. I was hanging out with him and then this girl that I knew there. And we went into this restaurant in the Pelourinho area of downtown, Salvador. And I saw a picture of this anthropologist, professor, named Lelia Gonzalez. She's one of the most important, let's say, black militants in Brazil's history. And I saw the painting on the wall, the picture of the wall in this little restaurant in the Pelourinho, and I'm like, that's Lelia Gonzalez. And here it is, two black Brazilians who are from there. They had no idea who she was. They gravitated to our history. They gravitated to our heroes, Martin, Malcolm, Rosa Parks, Black Panthers, because Brazil denied them their black history. It's only now, with the advent of not only the internet, but also quotas making it easier for black Brazilians to get into college, that they're beginning to rescue their own history. They're starting to talk about Luiz Gama. They made a film about this man. They're talking about Abdias do Nascimento. So all of these people, they're just learning about themselves. As long as that knowledge keeps flowing, you can't cut it off now, because the internet has made this information vital for everybody. So I'm saying I am seeing a change. I am seeing they are pushing back now. Maybe not as aggressively as African Americans are, not as aggressively as you're going to see, like the infamous basketball game. And I think that happened at the Palace in Detroit in Auburn Hills, where my man went into the audience and he put the Mac down. They're not there yet, but I'm telling you, they are getting there. Yeah.
No. Yeah. And you know what? And you're right. And what happened to us happened in a different era. There's different ways to fight. Now, it's a fight of the mind, where for us, it was a physical fight, because mentally we were there. We had the foundation. We had the family structure. We had the things that we needed so that we could fight back. Now, it's more of an information, like you said, an awakening. And you're starting to see them say, well, hold on, we have black heroes too. And
they do.
They have to diminish that by substituting it with somebody else. And like they try to do here, like our black history, now they want to taint it with people that are part of the LMNOP community. That's how they do it. Like they had, like Netflix. I'm just saying, like Netflix. You had they did a show with Ruskin, and the first thing that Ruskin did is he engaged in sexual encounter with a white dude. They let it be known up front that he was a bend over. That's what I call him, a bend over. So. And now you have them wanting to do the same thing with what's his name? James Baldwin. They want to do it. They want to do a movie with James Baldwin, and the guy that they're going to have him playing is the guy that played the fairy godmother in Cinderella. I forgot the black dude's name, but anyway.
Is that Billy Porter?
Yes, him. Yes. So now that's their new strategy, is to make the civil rights movement, our civil rights movement, a bag of Skittles. And that's what they focus on. It's like they want it to be colorized, the rainbow spectrum, so that you see the LMNOP community was always part of the civil rights movement. So here in Brazil, don't feel bad, because this is how Black Americans did it too. And in South Africa, this is how they did it too. So, and over here in Ghana, this is how they did it too. And Ghana said, oh, hell to the no. No, we ain't going with that. No, hell to the no.
Well, this is not something that I'm going to talk about on this channel, because it's a difficult conversation. But I'm going to tell you, when you study the situation, whatever movement that we're talking about, whether we're talking about in the U.S., whether we're talking about in Brazil, whether we're talking about South Africa, other countries in Africa, man, when you go into the roots of where those movements came from, how they started, and then how they got, let's say, adopted or taken over, the reason why all of this makes sense is because it's the same group of financiers who are controlling all of our movements. And as long as we allow outsiders to come into our movement by funding it or giving their leadership, it's not our movement anymore. And this is why I can look and see, man, when I was reading about South Africa and what we'll say the Nelson Mandela that they presented to the world, and then the real Nelson Mandela, what really happened to him, and then not only that, who was behind him, who was behind that movement in South Africa. I was like, the reason why it's so similar is because it's the same group of people who are controlling all of our movements. So when I look at Brazil, and I'm looking like, why are our movements going this way? It's always the same hidden hand that's behind our movements. Until we, as a group of black people, until we understand that, it's going to keep happening the same way that it is. The connections between the civil rights movement and Black Lives Matter, people may not see it, But when you go beneath the surface and find out the roots of those movements, it's going to all make sense to you.
Man, look here. Let me tell you something. Now, just a quick note to dovetail what you just said. So we've been to South Africa numerous times. We went to the Apartheid Museum. Now, that museum in Johannesburg, it has information that I never knew. It's detailed information. When you see the U.S. involvement in keeping apartheid going, and you see how they really feel about Nelson Mandela in the country, not what we've been presented, but how they really feel, then you understand, okay, Mandela was their Obama. He was how they used him to keep the peace. And now the Zulus were upset because they wanted their land back. And they felt like he betrayed them by not doing so. But he has been all over the world, has been touted as this peacemaker. When you go to Brazil, when you go to South Africa and you start talking to Zulus and Xhosa, no, they don't. No, they still feel some kind of way about that. And you see it playing out today. So you're right. It's the same people that are pulling the same strings. But if we have conversations and organize, which you don't have to be organized under a banner. Information is how you organize, and you just put it out there. Then things can change, and they are changing because now you're starting to see them scared about us having conversations, especially African Americans, because we're so rebellious. Because even though our culture may not seem like it was 40, 50 years ago, the match can be lit at any point in time, and a firecracker can be bust off, and that is contagious.
No, that's true. You know what I'm gonna. I know this doesn't necessarily have to do with the topic that we set out to discuss tonight, but you know, I'm working on a video right now, where in the last 6 years, the BET Awards have been nominating. It's going on right now. It's 8 o'clock tonight. I haven't watched the BET Awards in years, but what I'm seeing is that they're making BET international now. So there's countries all over the world that's watching BET, including Brazil. So what I'm saying is that we have to be very careful, because when we don't control our own, this is what happens. Where BET is right now, do we really want the images they present on BET to get broadcast around the world?
No.
I have a problem with that.
I do too.
I have a problem with that. So what I'm saying is that, go ahead.
No, go ahead. Because I'm gonna piggyback on what you just said. Go ahead.
I'm just saying that when they know that we have so much influence on how other blacks see our situation globally, all we got to do is mess up the African American image, and all of a sudden now that's going to be globalized. So what I'm saying is, when you look at the garbage and what we are calling hip hop today, okay, so now they're internationalizing this type of music. This is not Public Enemy, KRS-One. This is not X-Clan. They took it down by lowering it down to gangster rap. Then they turned it into sex rap. Now it's just like straight gutter rap. And then they're internationalizing that. And we don't understand that other cultures are picking up on that. So internationally, they're controlling us through our media, through the images that we present and that we present as blackness. And then we're accepting those images. So I celebrate those Brazilian artists being recognized on the BET Awards tonight and for the last 6 years. But at the same time, this is not the best we are at this point. And I don't think this is something that other blacks around the world should be copying.
No, but see that's the problem. We haven't been on code, because people don't, and we talk about this on BMO, because that's something that we noticed, is that your image matters. Our image matters because it's how powerful it is. And I tell guys, and they think that I'm exaggerating. I'm saying, but Black America, especially the men, your image is very powerful. That's why they have to diminish it, which is why you're starting to see more Black women being promoted worldwide. And there's nothing wrong with that, but the wrong image is being promoted. And it's very influential, because you can change the culture through the women.
Oh yeah, that's what they do.
You can change the culture through the women, and that's what they're doing. That's why when every Afro-Brazilian woman I was talking to, I'm Beyonce. I was like, sweetheart, you ain't Beyonce. I'm Beyonce. I'm Beyonce. I was like, sweetheart, okay, Beyonce got a husband. He got plenty of money. You ain't Beyonce. You might be Kelly Rowland, but you ain't Beyonce. You ain't Beyonce.
You know what? You know what? Man, we all over the place, but there's so many stories, man.
I know. Okay. Well, so I know that's just how it happens sometimes. But
I
know. I know it's late. I know you only got a couple more minutes. So
yeah. But okay, but I introduced topics that we could talk about in another time.
Okay.
When I used to, this all started making sense. Okay, I said this in one of our previous videos. I said my focus was so much on race that I didn't notice these other elements that were coming in. So what I mean by that is Black Brazilians were getting more access to quotas and being able to get college education. So when I would come across these gorgeous Black women in Brazil in the Movimento Negro, and I was thinking to myself, how come these women are single? I'm like, they're beautiful, they're educated, they're making money, they're accessing areas of Brazil that 20 years ago Black Brazilians didn't have access to. And I'm trying to understand, why are these, I did a video about this maybe last year or the year before, like, why are so many Black women single in Brazil? And looking at what's going on in the United States, I can see the similarity there.
Yes.
And it's okay, they snuck this in. Now, have you ever heard of Michelle Wallace? What was the name of that book that she did years ago? It was a hot book in the 70s that came out of the United States, The Myth of the Superwoman.
Yes.
And that book was ghostwritten by Gloria Steinem. And she was a CIA asset. She was put in there to mislead the black movement and to divide Black men and Black women, and it worked like a charm to this day. I'm seeing some of the same elements are happening there. So when I ask, why are there so many Black women that are single in Brazil, and why is their movement being so heavily led by Black women? And now we're seeing the answer. It's like, okay, if we Brazil is already divided because Black people have been taught to marry white. Now you got this thing coming in where the Black men are going to feel like they're being left behind, and there are people who are already talking about that. So again, the same game plan works over and over. They just wash and rinse and do it again.
Yeah, that's it. Mm-hmm. That is what we've noticed. We have noticed that they are running the same playbook in different spots of the diaspora, excuse me. But you can't tell people that because they're still in it. I'm like, we have already been through this. See, they don't show the evictions. They don't show the downtrodden. They don't show what's happening to the women now. Like, you have the Fannie Willis's case and the other judge down there. You don't see those parts of Black culture. You only see the parts that they want you to show because they can control it. But you don't see the after effects and what's going to happen, because once they get you to the point where they don't need you anymore, like here in the States, they done got rid of DEI, they get rid of affirmative action, AI is coming. Those jobs that you normally been able to get, now them jobs are gone. And you have no community to go back to. And you don't have a man to be there to support you because you have talked so bad about your man that they no longer want to be with you. Now, this is not a diss. This is just what we've noticed. And the same thing happening there, except for you don't have the safety nets like women in America do. So it's going to be worse for you.
Yeah.
It's going to be worse for you. And the same thing in other places. You need, for us to beat them, you have to be married. You need family at the foundation. They have told you don't need a man. Well, we are the canary in the coal mine, and now you have seen the devastation that happens when you break the nuclear family. Where in Brazil and other places, they didn't see that because they didn't go through it. So now they feel like they're empowered. I'm empowered. I'm taking my clothes off. I'm empowered. I'm gonna go out here and be with all these men. I'm empowered. But at the same time, you complaining because don't nobody want you. And it's the same thing. Like you said, educated women, you got the same thing. Ebony K. Williams, she talked the same thing about, I wouldn't want to be with a bus driver. Okay, cool. What happened? She had to go through the sperm to get that hakur. So she got it the reverse way.
Hey man, I'm not gonna touch that. You know you done opened up the can when you went there.
Okay. I understand. But that's what's happening. And it's funny because you hear Afro-Brazilian women, the same talking points are being said by them. And I'm like, wait a minute, how is your man oppressing you? You not how are you oppressed? I said, that sounds like an American argument. Black men have never been in a position to oppress you. So how did you come to that conclusion? Oh, because I heard Beyonce say it, all the single ladies. I heard Mary J. Blige. I heard so-and-so and so-and-so. I watched so-and-so and so-and-so. I was like, okay. But
Hey,
did you
you know
see?
what? Look, let me say this.
Go ahead.
This is what I'm saying, how we can't just look at things from what's going on in America anymore. And living in Brazil definitely taught me this. I was going to a job. I was doing translations on Avenida Paulista, which is one of the most, important streets in Sao Paulo. And I remember getting off the bus. There is this Afro-Brazilian philosopher. Her name is Djamila Ribeiro. She was honored, might have been 2020, 2021. She was given a humanitarian award at the BET Awards, okay? She's one of the most popular feminists in Brazil. And I just remember getting off at the bus stop when I was going to the job. And there was an article about her that they showed her on the cover of the magazine. And she was talking about what they call masculinidade tóxica. Any idea what that means?
I have no idea.
Listen again. You know what it is. Masculinidade tóxica.
Oh, masculine toxicity. Yeah. Toxic masculinity.
Toxic masculinity. I'm like,
yeah.
All the while that I studied Brazil, and I was in Brazil, I was visiting Brazil, I always wonder, is this something that's Brazilian made, or is this something they're importing from the United States? And a majority of the time, when something happens in the United States, some type of movement, some type of phrase, eventually it's going to make it down to Brazil, and they're going to copy it to the T. And that's exactly what's going on. This is why we say they're using the same playbook. They internationalize it, and then people don't know the wiser. They think it's something cool, and you can't tell them nothing.
But see, now that is the advantage that we have in the Black male travel movement, is we get to go to different places and make that assessment. And I think that's why we have a different perspective about all this stuff, because when you go from place to place to place to place and you start seeing the same play being ran, then you're like, okay, something's going on, because it's too systematic. It's too similar, and it's having the same devastating effect that it's having in the States. So, but when people don't travel and they just are in their little bubble, then they think that it's the new hotness. They think that's the end thing. Oh, we're making advancements. No, we've already been through that. That's why it's hard for them to accept that that's happening to us. Like, that can't be happening. Like this hasn't been done before. It's like, you have a museum. Go look at your museum. See who was behind apartheid in the States. See who, and in South Africa. See who helped funded some of these movements in your country.
Right.
That's just what it is. Because I'm gonna be honest with you. In 6 years from the LBGQ in Brazil, from 2017 to now, especially in the last 3 years, dude, it's like they dropped a bomb and glitter just went all over Brazil. I don't know what happened. I'm like, what the hell? Pedro de Sal is like a new gay parade.
Okay, look. I'm gonna say this, and I'm gonna check out.
Yeah, okay, all right.
Again, every time you open up something, it's another thing that's for another show.
Yeah.
What you got to understand is this. I didn't understand this in the beginning, because I wasn't looking for that. I was looking for specifically Black stuff. So I wasn't understanding what was going on with Black feminism and then LGBT stuff, right? I didn't realize. It wasn't until about 4 or 5 years ago that started seeping in. I'm like, oh, snap, this has been going on all this time, and I kind of ignored it. So this is what's going on. There was a study that came out, might have been last year, the year before. I got a video about this. But this is why I say we have to look at this as an international thing. You know the name George Soros?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. So NGOs in Brazil are being bankrolled by these huge multinational corporations and foundations. You know, George Soros has just basically bankrolled like a couple hundred NGOs in Brazil. And you know where all of that money is going? It's not going into any black men's organization. It's going into LGBT, it's going into feminist organization and a bunch of other very much to the left political movements. So all the way back to one of the most important black groups for women in Brazil is called Galedes. And when I looked them up, I'm like, dang, they were part of some huge like women's rights movement back in like the mid to late 80s, and it was over in China. So we see these communist elements coming in, the socialist elements coming in, and all those other movements that we say are part of that Marxist rhetoric, that Marxist movement. So it all starts making sense when you say, again, if you want to know what's going on, follow the money. All of those NGOs in Brazil are being engineered by these multinational foundations coming out of the United States and other places. So that's what you got going.
Definitely, and I definitely concur with you on that. And that's why I say it's so important for us to contradict the narrative of the image that's being put out. And that's why I say for us in the Black male tribal movement that when you go to these countries, you're ambassadors because they're trying to see if what they have seen on TV matches with your behavior. And that's what we want to do. To me, that's our little way of contradicting and fighting back and saying this is not what we are. That's just what they show you. This is who we are. And that's why when we do these events and we do outreach and give back and stuff like that, then they get a chance to see, okay, that's entertainment. This is who these people really are. And they get a different sense of that. But some people don't understand that. They're not really cerebral. They're just visual, and that's all they go by. So,
yeah.
But anyway, hey Marcus, I appreciate you coming on tonight. I know you got to go, but I do appreciate you coming on. And like you said, man, this is just a continuing conversation that needs to be had. And I think that not just from a tribal aspect, it's deeper than that. And I think having these conversations with you is very enlightening. I'm definitely glad that we were able to get together and do this. And man, we're going to do it again. We have to set up a time, but next weekend I'm going to be in North Carolina eating some barbecue. So next Sunday we won't be on, but we're gonna get
okay. All right.
Yeah. But we're gonna get back to it. So do you have any final words you want to give tonight based on tonight's show? Go ahead, man.
All I can say is that once you open up this can about Black history in Brazil, you can't close it. And even to this day, I'm still learning stuff because all of this information is coming on. So I've said this 100 times already. It's like, I need some help because I'm telling you, there's so much stuff that we could talk about with Brazil and I can't handle it all by myself. It's too much. So all I'm saying is let's keep the dialogue coming. I just want to present the facts and let people choose. Okay, look, these are the facts. You deal with it how you want to, but these are just the facts. And I wanted to bring that to you.
Definitely. And you know what? That's all we wanted to do is just bring people the facts. That's all it's been about. It's not about trying to chase clout or anything like that. It's just our approach when we travel, when you go from different places. If you really are looking at what's going on in your surroundings, things you pick up on. And like I said, the information that you bring to us is definitely something that needed in this space because there are a lot of people that are putting out a lot of misinformation. And contrary to what we say, they think that we're hating on them. And no, I'm sorry, brother. You can't compete with somebody that's got 4,000 articles, 300 videos, and has done extensive research. So, but anyway, brother, hey, I appreciate you. Have a good night. I'll chop it up with you sometime next week, and then we'll get together and schedule for the next interview, man.
Listen, when you get finished with the toothpick, getting the ribs out your teeth, you hit me back up. We'll do this again.
All right, man. Hey, man. Good talking to you, man. Have a good night.
Hey, man, I'm gonna catch up with you next week. Well, 2 weeks. All right. Talk to you later.
All right, man. Talk to you later.
Have a good one. Yep.
You too, man. Woo, man. Look, hey, like I say, man, once again, thanks for BB&T coming up. This is one of the conversations that needs to be had. And, we like to have fun on the show. There's nothing serious. But at the same time, it's good information that you really need. Because if you go to Brazil thinking everything's peaches and cream, you're going to get down there and find out that it ain't what you've been told. And contrary to what other people may or may not say, these are the things that are going on. These are the things that you need to consider just jumping up and moving to a country. And our approach to this is something that we look at from a holistic standpoint, not just for the women, but for the culture. Because honestly, that's what you're doing. You're trying to relocate to a different culture because the culture that you're in now is not benefiting you. And that's what the Black Man's Option is all about. So if you have not, like, share, and subscribe to the channel, go buy a t-shirt, hit the like button, tell a friend. And like I said, we're not going to be on next Sunday. I'm going to be eating some barbecue with some BMO brothers in North Carolina, but we'll be back the following week. And by that time, I'll have the new topic for Marcus and I to continue this discussion. But once again, I want to thank everybody for tuning in on the Black Man's Options YouTube channel and on Black Brazil Today YouTube channel. I think this collab has been working out great. It's bringing awareness to a subject that I think has been long overdue, and I can't wait to continue it. So with that being said, y'all take care. Enjoy your 4th. Eat as much as you can, and then come back and join us for the following 2 weeks. But anyway, y'all take care. Have a good night. Jamel, fly me out here so I can catch this flight.
Everybody in here was picked, selected, chosen. You are a difference maker. You are special. You are somebody. You're a conduit of change, and that's what we're going to do, change things. I don't know if y'all know it, but we're going to win. I don't know if you feel it, but we're going to win. I don't know if you can see it, but we're going to win. You got to understand we're going to win right now, not later, right now. Everybody in here is a change agent. We could go down the line and every last one of you have a story how you provoke change wherever you've been in some form or fashion. It ain't no normal guys in here. Everybody's been through something, they come out of it, but you changed the game wherever you've been. Am I right or wrong? You just got to believe. I believe it. You got to believe it.
This is Charles Tyler over at the Black Man's Option. Remember, I showed you the door. Only you can walk through it. Let's see what the world is all about. Charles Tyler signing off for the Black Man's Option. Check y'all later.